Hey guys, gals, and those in between, we're back. And after potentially ruining my algorithm by just playing a 20-year-old, or as someone mentioned, a close to 30-year-old game, it's time to ruin it some more as we talk about a more recent entry, Silent Hill F, Konami's latest iteration of the Silent Hill franchise. So, does the first original story in the series, in over a decade, show promise for the future? Or does it foretell a coming storm? Sit back, relax, grab a frosty beverage as we explore Silent Hill F. Now, after the Silent Hill 2 remake, there was some cautious optimism regarding the future of the series. People felt that Silent Hill was finally back on the right track. Though, if you have watched my previous video on the history of the Silent Hill series, you know that I would dispute the idea that there was ever a point in time that there was just a slew of horrible Silent Hill games. And a lot of those games are still well worth your time, especially Downpour. But the 2 remake was for many the herald of something new, fresh, and innovative, especially after the terrible series that was Silent Hill Ascension, which is free on Tubi, by the way. The most I can say about that is episode 1 had a chatter say, Hideo Kojima Kami in my tummy. And that about really sums up Ascension. We also had the Silent Hill 2 movie release after, and yeah, reception wasn't great. So, little fact about me, I go to the movies about once or twice a week. That week, I couldn't go because I was getting dental work. I had a root canal done without going under, and somehow that experience was to many more pleasant than the actual film. Seeing it at home, the most I can say was an attempt was made. So for many, Silent Hill F was hopefully going to be more of the game and less of the film. The big issue that got people worried was that Konami was rather silent, ironically, in regards to any updates for the game. They kind of came out, said Ryokishi 07 of When They Cry fame is making a story, and then left. They basically just pulled a Bethesda with the Elder Scrolls, and people were worried that the game was actually going to be cancelled. There were no reports of this happening, and anytime anyone asked Konami, Konami would say, hey, we're still working on this. However, as someone who one time emailed the Embracer group about the status of the Fear Effect remake to only be told, we're still working on it, for the game to then be cancelled like 2 months later, I can understand folks' skepticism regarding the actual status of the game. I think this is more, however, due to the ever-changing content and ever-evolving needs of people on the internet. Back then, most people got their news from magazines or things like G4. It wasn't super uncommon to hear about a game at, say, E3 and then hear virtually nothing for a few months, maybe a blurb here and there before hearing more about it the next year. That being said, Konami was quiet for a full 3 years. Silent Hill F was announced in October 2022, and we wouldn't get any real updates until March 2025, when another transmission would arrive and we would finally get more answers and more questions, which fits the series if we're being honest. So the transmission starts, we're introduced to Matoi Okamoto, who drops a new trailer for the game and explains what the theme of the game is. It's about finding the beauty in terror. And typically I'm against when horror tells you what it's about. I really feel like some media, especially horror, should be more opaque, especially when it's more cerebral. That being said, this is J-horror, and even though I am a certified weeb, I'm not Japanese. So I never would have gotten that whole finding beauty in terror. I would have noticed how oddly beautiful the game can be and its use of flowers and themes of femininity, so I will give it a pass because again, this is something from another culture, and unless you're immersed in that culture, things can be lost in translation. But this J-horror bent was because Matoi felt that the spirit of Silent Hill was being lost. Him and Akira Yamaoka have stated that Silent Hill started as an outsider's perspective on Western horror. I would dispute this, as really the only game that doesn't feel like Silent Hill is Homecoming, but Konami felt that Japanese style was lost, so we got J-horror now. In regards to what J-horror is specifically, we got some interesting responses in regards to that. Ryokishio7 states that one type of horror is the uncertainty caused by not knowing the current situation. This is a state of not knowing whether the situation you are in is dangerous or safe. In short, it's a state of suspicion. I believe these two axes are the principles behind the horror we experience as humans. This was his response as to what makes horror uniquely Japanese. Matoy has also stated that what makes J-horror unique is a sense of unease, as if there's something not quite right that you can't put your finger on. Something that fits perfect with Silent Hill 2 in The Room, and hey, I read the Parasite Eve novel. I definitely felt there was something strange when the main character just casually wanted his brain-dead wife's liver, you know? Just have some lunch and harvest some cells from my brain-dead wife's liver. Just your average Tuesday. Happens to all of us. That sense of unease that they were attempting was obviously why this setting of Japan was chosen. During development, this was something that shocked Ryokishio7. Well, he was double shocked. Firstly, when Konami hired him, he walked in literally thinking they wanted him for something small, maybe as an advisor. But nope, hey, we want you to write the new Silent Hill game. Also, it's in Japan. Ryokishio7 was under the assumption Silent Hill was, well, in Silent Hill. But this is Matoy's new direction, that Silent Hill can manifest anywhere. That Silent Hill is both a physical place, but also one that straddles reality. A place filled with the struggles of the characters, their sins, and their disappointments, empowered by local lore. I've said previously all places have their rural and strange areas, and all cultures have something unique. Matoy believes the same, as he wants to expand the series past F, which we will get to later in the video. Till then, Ryokishio7 was a solid choice. He's famous for his When They Cry series. Sadly, there was no air conditioning jokes in F, which did bum me out. Again though, this was a wise choice, as When They Cry is a visual novel, well, multimedia series now, about horrors in a rural Japanese village. And if you're someone who isn't a visual novel fan, When They Cry, along with Fate Stay Night, are one of the few that have entered just the common nerd lexicon. He of course said he was a big fan of the series and he wanted to bring back that Japanese spirit. But in research, it seemed he was actually really key in making this game come to fruition. Besides just writing, it was his idea of where the game took place. He drew inspiration from Kanayama in Gedo City, the Gifu prefecture. The reason it was chosen, according to Ryokishio7, is that the town's labyrinthine alleys really spoke to him, and the fact that you can almost see how time flows. How the town has changed due to the passage of time and the needs of its residents. And that's an approach I really like, showing these ghosts of the past in the design and architecture of the town. It was clear Ryokishio7 was not just taking a paycheck, he was fully locked in. He even talked about why he wanted the game to have a female main character. That he wanted her to make her own choices, as the women in Silent Hill tend to be used and hurt without their own say. Which I can largely agree on, Lisa Garland and Angela being the biggest examples. But I still love Part 3 in Heather's journey, which, while yes, caused by others, comes with the realizations that it's a story of growing up and deciding your own path. And Konami had toyed with the idea of a female lead in his planned Downpour DLC, starring Anne, where you would see things from her point of view. It's a shame we never got it. During the transmission, Akira Yamaoka appeared and confirmed what he would be doing for the game. Sadly, he would not be doing the entire soundtrack, he would be splitting his duties and only working on the music for the Fog World. Similar to Matoy, he spoke about wanting to get that Japanese spirit back and his pride as a Japanese man, powering through this game. And even though Team Silent was never actually one big cohesive team, Yamaoka was one of the few people that was always there in those projects. And yeah, his music here is great as always. What can I say? The king knocks it out of the park yet again. He did note though that even though he was making a more Japanese game, he insisted on not making his portion too Japanese, as he stated, because A, Silent Hill is enjoyed by fans all over the world, and B, you can already clearly see that you're in Japan. No need to beat people over the head with it. So he went in thinking of music to connect with everyone, and he was thinking of sound overlapping with characters' emotions, stating that that is what makes Silent Hill. And well, he is the expert. He's also talked about his design philosophy regarding music, that music for games, one cannot just make good music, but one has to make music about what the player is feeling at that moment, because games have an interactive element to it. And again, he is the expert. The other half of the game is done by Kensuke Inage, someone who's worked in games since 2005. He's mostly done things like the Warrior series and even the latest Samurai Showdown in Tekken 8. He sent a message from his lair, the typical that he's a big fan, but also that the other world would be very Japanese sounding to contrast with the more normality of the fog world. But it would still involve Hinako's agony, conflict, and fear. Lastly, we learned that Masahiro Ito would not be returning for the game, and that the monster design would instead be sourced to the artist known as Kara. But Matoy has gone on record saying he had every confidence they would continue the legacy of Silent Hill. And honestly, while Sakura Head was still great, I will say the whole beauty and terror thing shows in these monsters. I think Kara had an unenviable task of following Itoi, but they did an amazing job, as these designs are ones that even months later still stick with me. And as much as I contend Silent Hill was never in a horrible state, I literally cannot recall any original monster from Homecoming save the final boss, and I did a 2-hour video on the history of the series. Here though, we see a clear outline of the monsters. I do love how you see the female monsters looking somewhat elegant, but at the same time monstrous, while the monsters that are more masculine are a good deal more hideous. From bloated forms that try to bully you with their sheer size, to more rabid dog-like ones that grab you and lick you. My favorite is the pregnant monster showing a fear of childbirth. Honestly, the monsters are a big highlight and some of the best in the series. Now, with this dream team assembled, you would think everything was smooth sailing. However, some publications were rather skeptical because, well, Konami was not doing this in-house. There was a new team in charge. We now introduce Neobards Entertainment into the fold, and they were given a rather gargantuan project. Firstly, they had to follow Blooper Team's Silent Hill 2 remake, and they also had, I would argue, the tougher job. Yes, while the 2 remake was entirely different from the original, the groundwork was also already there. But Neobards had to craft something from basically scratch. That and their portfolio didn't really give people a lot of hope. They mostly worked on ports, with the only games they had full development over being Resident Evil Resistance and Reverse. Both games that were kinda hated by the fandom, but the general consensus being that those titles were dead on arrival with zero hope, with most of the drubbing falling on Capcom for even trying to put these things out there, which no one wanted at all. Microtransactions and loot boxes for a series that didn't need it. They also helped according to their own website with the art of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and hey, I have my issues with that new trilogy, but Final Fantasy has always been stylish. Now, again, we don't really see what a company sends in order to get their job, but they obviously showed something that impressed Konami. It is ironic though that after all this talk of the Japanese spirit, Japan this, Japan that, the game was sent over to a group of non-Japanese developers. And some journalists noticed this and were skeptical if Neobards would be able to bring that authentic Japanese feeling. Which I get. I'm Hispanic in real life. And while there are similarities between different cultures, there's also some pretty vast differences. So people had a right to be a bit on the wary side. After all, Neobards, while working with Japanese companies themselves, weren't Japanese. Which this part was really difficult to do research on. So Neobards is headquartered in Hong Kong and has studios in mainland China and Taiwan. So I read a lot of articles and many just kinda use Taiwanese and Chinese interchangeably, which you shouldn't do that, and I'm well aware that me saying that might get this video blocked by the CCP. Apologies to my 10 Chinese viewers, but I'd rather be beefing with the CCP than with Lilith Lovett. So from now on, we'll just say Neobards, non-Japanese. We'll just go with that. In order to assuage fears, Konami did something really cool and released a series of videos showing Neobards making the game and discussing it. I really love these behind-the-scenes stuff, and they illuminated some decent info. Like firstly, they hired Japanese actors so the language can feel authentic. And look, I've said it before, I'm a weeb, but even with my weebery, I can't tell the difference between Japanese accents. I know the Kansai accent is a thing, but gun to my head, I would not be able to pick it out. So it was a really great thing that Neobards took native speakers into account. And that's not the only thing that got revealed. In these series of videos, they also said why they chose the Showa era for the game to take place in. The mindset being that it's so far in the past, being 50 years ago, it was a great way to unsettle Japanese players. That J-horror thing again. Having that familiar but eerie feel, these ghosts of the past. A place that at the same time exists, but doesn't exist anymore. It's a trend I can really get behind. You can see this in a lot of big cities, not historical districts, but rather the city itself. You see shades of its past as it grew. If you took someone from 50 years ago and transplanted them today or vice versa, there would be a sense of it being not quite right. Needless to say, I thought this was a genius move. They revealed some other things in their video, like having to decide what parts of the script they felt would best serve as animation and which as gameplay. Lastly, they talked about combat, how the intent was to make Hinako seem a bit clumsy. She's not a martial artist or a Black Ops super soldier, she never fought in the Kumite, she's just a girl. And it's something that Silent Hill has always had a hard time with, that balance. How do you make satisfying combat without making the player feel overpowered, or having the character so weak that it's more cumbersome than anything? And they hope that this would be the game to change that. Unfortunately for me, that's where it gets kind of hit or miss. Now comes the biggest thing that this game has changed, and it's the combat. So much so that many people have dubbed Silent Hill F a Souls-like, which even Matoy and others have stated, it's not that, please don't call it that, please stop calling it that. Which I can understand from a business standpoint. I know a few people, when they hear Souls-like, they think, oh, that's those hard games, I don't want to play that. That, or they're just burned out on the million or so imitators the series has spawned, so they won't give it a chance. Confession time, I don't like deck builders. I like Bites and Kaitos, and that's it. Whenever I hear roguelike deck building, I just tap out. So I can understand Matoy not wanting that Souls-like label, because they don't want it to be, again, just kind of lost in the pile of other Souls-like imitators that gets no traction. And also, they're not wrong in saying it's not a Souls-like. First, to get it out of the way, I'm not a big fan of Silent Hill F's combat, but it's not a Souls-like at all. The best way I'd have to describe a Souls-like to someone who has never played it is that it's very similar to boxing. Boxing, for those who don't know, is many times dubbed the sweet science, or the art of hitting and not getting hit. Don't worry, I'm not going to drone on too long about boxing or its history. Just merely that anyone that has had experience or knows people who do combat sports, even at an amateur level, the idea of just punch, no thoughts, head empty, is farcical. And that's Souls-like combat in a nutshell. It's about learning your opponents, whether that be bosses or normal enemies, and hitting them while you yourself avoid damage. Whether that be attacking, defending, parrying, rolling out of the way, or in something like Stranger of Paradise, using its system to set up combos. The best Souls-like games, well, besides Stranger of Paradise, no, I will never not shout this game out, are the ones where I feel fully in control of combat, and where when I die, I fully contend it was my fault. I didn't know enough, I wasn't strong enough, I was too cocky, and knew I should have defended or rolled, or a myriad of other things. The blame falls solely on me and my shoulders, and it's not its fine-tuned combat. Silent Hill F isn't like that. I gotta be honest, I never really got combat like at all. Even now, all these hours later, I don't really feel all that competent at fighting enemies, and honestly, I feel like all the new systems the game adds doesn't really add much, and if anything, just detracts from the game. First up, you have a sanity meter. And no, it's not like, say, Eternal Darkness, where the sanity meter was a unique addition that added to the gameplay. Here, all sanity does is it lets you use focus. What's focus? Well, when you use focus, you can more easily parry enemies for more devastating hits. However, just using focus drains your sanity, and some enemy attacks will deplete said bar. If it's all gone, then said attacks will now damage your health. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, that means the game wants you to wait for the right time to focus in order to parry. Well, no. Because not only do some items heal your sanity, but any save point will heal your sanity to the max and some of your health. So all this made me do is just spam focus attacks to defeat enemies, and then run to a save point. It didn't add to the game, and if anything, just detracted from it. Now, I know some people might say that's only on normal modes, and if you play on harder difficulties, then you have to use Faith, which is a finite resource, to restore sanity. So it becomes more about resource management, because you also have a stamina bar, and if you dodge too much, you open yourself up to hits. So for the first point, that's true, but this isn't about harder difficulties. I'm playing the game as it was intended, and as intended, the whole sanity system is more a detriment than a plus. It's nowhere near as deep as a Souls-like, so that along with the stamina system, when I do find myself out of breath, it just meant, oh, I'm gonna take a hit. And honestly, it just feels really out of place in a Silent Hill game to be dodging and parrying while worrying about both a health, sanity, and stamina meter. And the actual design of the game doesn't really work to its benefit. While the claustrophobic nature can be spooky, its narrow design means that a lot of times you won't be able to just run away from enemies, so you'll be forced to fight. And there are many situations in the game where the only path forward is once more combat, which isn't fun and doesn't really evoke that Silent Hill feel. The worst is halfway through the game where Hinako gets a super bar, legit a Spartan rage meter that will allow you to tank hits and just demolish enemies. I remember getting to this point and pausing the game. It was just the thing that made me say, this isn't Silent Hill. Which I get you have to evolve the series, and playing part 1 can be really rough because of how it's aged, but this feels like a step too far with everything, and it's not done. Because now you can supplement Hinako. You get Omamaris, which are actual things. Good luck charms of which you can equip a max of 4 that can increase your health, stamina, or give you bonus abilities like increasing your focus, increasing the weapon damages, and whatnot. You also find items throughout the game that you can offer to shrines to either increase the slots or increase one of your 3 bars. Maybe the intention was for players to experiment, increase health if they're dying too much, but end of the day, everyone is just going to use the same broken setups, and I felt no need to actually experiment. Again, it's Silent Hill, I really shouldn't be experimenting. That doesn't really feel like the Silent Hill I know and love. And the worst part about all this my complaints, it's that combat is actually incredibly easy. You get so many health items, it's insane. The only times I died are, well, the same reason I die in literally every survival horror game. Because I am a cheap dumbass. I will have like 10 health kits, be on critical health, and still be like, I don't know, maybe I can tank one more hit, just saying. I really will not waste a healing item. I'm that dude in an RPG that will have 99 elixirs on a super boss and still be like, I don't know, I might need these down the road. And again, I think this will be the average person's experience. Going back to Souls, I've always beaten them, and I've even platted a few like Bloodborne. That being said, there is no way on God's green earth I will ever do a deathless or hitless run. I just don't got that in me. So again, I think I can really represent the average person. So I say with confidence, there's really nothing here to really make you worry. If anything, you'll be spending more time at shrines like me just getting rid of items for more faith for your level ups, or even tossing away health items. Even the weapon system, because yes, there's also a durability system here. There's so many weapons just lying around, and while there's a variety from quick knives to bulky hammers, the combat isn't so deep. You have to master the intricacies of these different types. And again, they'll all break. But with so many weapon kits that will restore durability, there was never once a time where I felt worried, oh man, I might be out of luck. Honestly, sometimes I just wasted weapon kits because I was getting so much, and I really like some weapons. Like when Hinako becomes Triple H with the sledgehammer, I just wanted to keep it just for the style. So yeah, combat is clunky, kind of boring, and forced on you while not being that great, which is a shame because the actual meat of the game is quite good, with caveats. Yeah, this is what we all bought the game for, the story. So if you want to skip, you should go ahead and do it now because we're about to learn the horrors of a Japanese girl in the 1960s. Silent Hill F starts with someone playing with a doll before we are introduced to our main character, Hinako, who lives with her parents. Her father being abusive, stating that as her father she should listen to him. Her mother is submissive to said abuse, and we learn that Hinako's sister Junko has been married. Hinako even states that she was married off to pay for their father's debt. If it wasn't obvious, the roles of women and how society treats them, forces things upon them, is a central theme of this game. I don't hate that it's at the start. It feels natural with her father being abusive, and you see as you explore the town, Hinako remarking on seeing couples, older men drinking at like 10 in the morning. I think it's a pretty good way to establish her fears. Yes, Silent Hill is all about subtext. But let's also not pretend we didn't fight a giant penis monster in the first 30 minutes of Silent Hill 3. So Silent Hill uses subtext, and sometimes it's like, yeah, she's a teenage girl. The thought of her first time brings her anxiety, so here's a giant penis monster. As you meet the characters, Hinako will write them down and the events in her journal, which she is a teenager. I used to have a journal at that age, and even last year I found myself journaling more. She even draws the various characters, and they actually explain in the novel that when she was younger, she dabbled in art, like doodling. She meets her friend Shu, gets a headache, and takes a pill when a monster arrives from the fog that chases her. Escaping the chase, you decide to find your friends, especially Sakuko. But when you do find her, she's passed away, now covered in those same flowers. Hinako loses it, goes bananas on some monsters, and passes out as we enter the Shrine World. To get this out of the way, I don't like the Shrine World. What you see is what you get, and while it is impressive to look out into the darkness, that's it. I feel minus one part in the other world, this felt really underwhelming, especially what we saw in the 2 remake in making the other world a character in itself. We saw more of that and even Downpour. It still has plenty of Silent Hill, hey, what's going on? But I wish there was just more diversity. In the Shrine World, you first solve a puzzle, and the puzzles are a bit underwhelming. There was nothing here that made me scratch my head, even on the recommending setting, which I've said before, it could just be that I've played so many Silent Hill games that I can just kind of do these puzzles without thinking too deeply about them. There were some I couldn't get in one shot that I did basically get via trial and error, and that seems to be the general consensus. It's either very much doable, or because some things weren't perfectly translated, trial and error. If you want a bigger brain tease, you have to ratchet up the puzzle difficulty, which you can raise independent of the gameplay. After that puzzle, you meet Fox Mask, who will be your guide in this shrine, and a major character in this game. Also very clearly a bad guy. In this area, there's also invincible enemies, and by that I mean they revive, so you just have to be quick. But you'll be able to solve through this pretty fast. Besides seeing the doll again, all that happens is you solve another puzzle, are chased once more, and you awaken once more in the real world. The pacing. The pacing is an issue that does not get better, and that's a real shame because that's the fundamental part of Silent Hill. That first visit to the other world takes like 15 minutes tops. You awaken in the real world once more by Shu, and you decide to find your friend Rinko and try to escape town. Shu calls you his partner, but he seems to keep disappearing and sometimes reappearing, leaving you by yourself, similar to Fox Mask. You fight your first mini-boss before getting lost in the field. Here is one of the better puzzles, having to find which is the correct scarecrow to proceed. If you get it wrong, you're going to get attacked. Once you get through it, you read some articles to show this was Hinako's fear when she was younger, how she was lost in the fields. After exiting said fields, you find Rinko in her home, and it's clear she doesn't like Hinako. As before you leave, she pushes you down the stairs, and you find yourself in the fog world once again. More of the same here, just be quick and get to the end, and you encounter the first real boss, a monster version of Sakugo, dressed like a shrine maiden, something that she truly wished for. This might be the player's first real test, but again, I only died so much because I refused to heal, like, ever. If you're not a total dumbass like me, you'll never die. I saved to talk about this when mentioning the story, but I don't really like the bosses. In a game that's supposed to be more geared towards combat, I found the best strategy in order to beat every single boss was to simply just tank hits, heal, and keep hitting them. There was no real forethought required in any of these encounters. It just felt like they were tougher versions of challenges you already face. So just parry, heal, dodge, attack, that's it. This is a real letdown, especially coming after part 2, which had not only the abstract daddy boss fight, where it made you relive Angela's abuse, making you feel like you were her hiding from her abusive father, which I get is a strange statement. Oh, my favorite part? Experiencing the child abuse, of course. Then again, my favorite part of Final Fantasy X is where you kill your father, so, I mean, it is what it is. There was also the Eddie fight, which was similarly amazing, not only in its presentation, but also in its mechanics. Because it's easier if you turn off your flashlight and radio. It was the game using the systems that you were used to against you. You don't really get that here. So you kill your friend, Fox Mask arrives, and he makes you drink boiling lava as you fade with the words, "Don't trust Fox Mask." In the real world, some of your injuries from the other world take shape. As the group decide to leave town, starting with the school, it's clear that Rinko doesn't like Hinako. I mean, that was obvious with the whole pushing her down the stairs bit. She says they should split up, her with Shu and Hinako by herself. You even hear at the start tell Shu that he needs to forget Hinako because Hinako is dead. Which, I mean, you're clearly not. You make your way to the school so that you can find the keys to the gate to escape the town. You have to do this yourself because Rinko is tired. I already don't like her. At the school, you get tons of notes from Rinko solidifying her hate for Hinako, saying that Hinako acts masculine around Shu. The school is actually really good, from the puzzles that I feel like are some of the best in the game, and also to see it slowly transform and warp by the flowers, showing that other world slowly seeping in, changing it into something alluring but horrid. I wish there was a bigger focus on this. Getting the key, Shu tells you need to rest, and you do and are once more transported into the other world. Before you awaken, you hear Fox Mask again state that you saved his life, and now he wants to save your soul. And now you have to kill your friends. First is Sakugo. You learn that Sakugo was always a lonely child who was scared of the dark and had a fear of rejection. From a doctor's note, you learn that she's on the spectrum having autism. Her only real friends for a while were rabbits that she would take care of, and then she was ostracized for spending so much time with those rabbits. She was really all alone before Hinako became her friend. In this world where emotions are laid bare, it shows the depths of Sakugo's feelings. Her dream to get married and be a shrine maiden, to restore her family shrine and have Hinako by her side, only to feel that she was betrayed by her only friend. It's really heartbreaking, but the way you leave her is you turn off all the lights and you leave Sakugo in the darkness as she begs you to not betray her. Next up is Rinko. Here you see her room and that she is obsessed with Shu, having pictures of him, and you learn that she always thought Hinako was a pest. You drop her in lava. Truth be told, don't feel that bad. Not as bad as Sakuko about her fate. Because from Rinko's own internal psyche, we learn that she has a superiority complex. She enjoys feeling that she is above others. When she was younger, she would revel in the fact that she would buy poor kids candy, and it's hinted that one of those kids was Hinako. So she would relish the fact that she had something that she could hold over her supposed friend. Hence why she hates Hinako. Because how is it that Hinako is able to get Shu's attention and she isn't? Last up is your partner Shu. He tells Hinako that whatever choice she makes, he's fine with it, as you also kill him and then wake up in the real world. Here you see that you're alone and Hinako thinks that there must be a good reason why Shu left. Maybe Rinko did something, honestly. Nothing really happens. You just get into a chase scene as you decide to head to Shu's home, where you find a note that he made the red capsules that you've been taking and that he's always been a shoulder for her. And then it's back into the shrine world. Again, the previous one, you spent a good deal of time, maybe around 30 minutes or so, only to then spend 10 minutes in the fog world to be dragged right back into the shrine world. And I want to appreciate the fog world and the location and not keep getting tossed into the other world at a whim. It's all about balance, and this is where the game really falters. So we're back in the other world, and this is where things get strange. Well, stranger to say the least. Here you have to do a series of trials where Hinako has to literally mutilate herself for Fox Mask. Her arm is removed so that it can be replaced by that of a beast. This is also where you get that super meter. The top portion of her face is cut and replaced with that of a mask. Lastly, she's branded. You are then led down a hall with Fox Mask, almost like a marriage ceremony, with her journal even stating you'll be happy so long as you listen to him. Before you see the doll again and a monster Rinko appears. You beat it as both girls lay their feelings out to bear, with Rinko stating that she never liked Hinako, and Hinako stated she only wanted the best for Rinko. We then appear on what we think is the real world, as we get a call from Hinako's mother who says that she has to come home soon, and then we see her sister Junko, but the other world version of her, stating that Hinako has to make a choice. So I feel we're still technically in the other world, but I don't hate this. I know I complained about the pacing, but the other world for her home is just amazing. It's her home, but it extends to what seems like forever. Once you reach the back, you're just simply transported to the front again in another version from another time. So different doors are locked or open depending on which version of her home you're in. This is brilliant and plays with the whole a landscape changing with time. It's her home, but it's also not, because of how it's been altered. It's familiar, yet it's different. And I wish we saw more of that throughout the game. Eventually you meet another Hinako who says one of them has to die. They both cannot exist before she disappears and you fight your mom and dad. After beating them, the monster in white that's been chasing you from the start kills your parents and you are transported to the shrine world. Again, a letdown. I can't recall what happens here besides Foxmax saying it's almost over and Juko telling Hinako that she has to make a choice soon. If not, that she will kill her. After more puzzles and combat, it's back to the fog world. Here you run through an enemy gauntlet, which I wasn't a fan of. You meet the monster, it grabs you with its fox arm, and Junko appears and tells it to kill Hinako. In the shrine world, the shrine Hinako does a ceremony, gets covered in flowers, and is now in the fog world. The shrine Hinako treks back to her parents' home as they congratulate her, and she kills them. It shows that the fog monster, the monster in white, was the Hinako in the shrine, or rather Fox Hinako, and that monster was how the Hinako in the fog world perceived her as. It's a very Silent Hill thing and something I loved. It's a callback to other parts in the series, how different people perceive reality. Even in Downpour, how Anne saw Murphy as the boogeyman at the end of the game, or throughout the game where Murphy saw the wheelman, even though that was something that was from Anne's reality. It's now time for the final part, the final shrine world, where you meet the fox elf who is shocked that you, the other Hinako, is still alive. For the sake of not making it more confusing than it is, I will call her Bird Hinako because of the freedom that avians represent, and because we do see the symbolism of birds in the game for that very reason. So Bird fights Fox, and again, it's not that hard. I beat it without dying. You have so many health items that I got the trophy for beating this boss without dying on my first attempt. I didn't even know that was a trophy. So you beat the game, and holy crap, the ending sucks. It's not an ending. You get another running sequence, Bird Hinako stares at Fox Hinako, and the game just kinda ends. After some credits, we get a post-credit scene like it's an MCU film, where it's revealed that this was all just a delusion inside Hinako's mind. That Hinako was getting married, and on the day of her wedding, she killed two men implied to be Shu and her fiance, as the camera zooms in on the red pills. So all this time, you were in the past as Hinako recalls it. Now, I hate the fact that the ending kinda sucks and the game locks you into an ending as opposed to the freedom to choose your own path like in other games. The twist though, I don't mind, and I think it's actually rather brilliant because the game hinted at it before that you were not in the same timeline. Things like Hinako calling Shu a Showa kid and talking about kids in the Showa era almost like in a past tense. And really no one speaks like that. In high school, I never went around, "How do you do, fellow millennials?" I only heard the term millennials from people older, and only heard that denominator of millennial from people my age once a younger generation appeared. We also see that she has gaps in her memory when she talks about when she became friends with certain people. Her recollection is vague, saying she thinks they met in the first year of middle school, and though it's never stated in-game, because of things like her uniform and her mentioning in her journal puberty just starting, it's clear that she's still in middle school anywhere from the second or third year. And that is way too little of a time frame for her memories to be this hazy and vague regarding people she would have met a year or two ago at the most. So I think the game actually dropped some excellent hints to look back on that the truth was always there. Ryokishi07 even said that he feels like Silent Hill, the essence of it is when the other shoe drops and the clearer picture comes together. I also really enjoyed the symbolism of her getting married, killing off her friends, and that she has to leave them behind. It's just a shame the ending is terrible and being locked in is not fun, because now you have to replay the game to get better endings that more flesh out the story. And this has been universally panned. They didn't have to do this. So after that first ending, anytime you take a red capsule, you will be locked into that first ending. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if they just tweaked the game, like not forcing you to take a red capsule at the start. It would be a really unique way to reward skilled players, because red capsules are the easiest and fastest way to regain health. So naturally, during boss fights, you're going to pop those suckers down while you still have a minuscule health bar and are figuring the game out. If the game didn't lock you into it and gave you some hint about the red capsules, like you can take these but there might be some side effects, I think the first ending would be looked upon more fondly, rather than now where it's universally derided as forcing you to replay the game to get a more satisfying conclusion. But yeah, you gotta do more stuff. First, you can do the UFO ending to get a lightsaber, and it ends the game quickly. It's actually really cool besides showing the dog from part 2 again. It's an emotion manga style, though nothing will beat James from Silent Hill 2 making a cameo in the remake. Or of course the scrap joke ending of Origins where you find out it was all just a bad dream had by Solid Snake of all people. Now you still can't get all the endings, you can only get endings 2 or 3, and after getting one of them, you can then unlock ending 4. Again, this is just really silly and overcomplicates things. It's like reinventing the toaster, no one asked for it. So we gotta go through more endings. There are some changes for New Game Plus. Firstly, there are new cutscenes, and the game will alert you if there is new material. I like this, it plays with the idea of you're never taking the same journey twice. In regards to gameplay, there are now boxes you can open up for goodies like for more faith and upgrades. And in the Shrine World, after the first encounter, you start as a fully foxed up Hinako, making it much easier and honestly kind of boring. Now, to get to the other endings, it operates more like part 1 or The Room, where you have to do a set of things, rather than part 2 or Shattered Memories, where it collects data in the back to see what ending you get. The game actually tells you what you need to unlock said endings, which makes sense, though I wished it was like part 2 where you find some document that gives you a hint, but hey, at least the game tells you. The biggest issue here is that you need to do a side quest to get the Sacred Sword along with an elixir in order to get the other endings. But because of how the game was overall designed, with exploration not really being rewarded or desired, with how bothersome I found combat, and with how narrow Ebisu Guoka is, honestly, yeah, I used the guide because I knew for a fact that even if the game at the start shows you an open door, a clear sign of go here, I was confident I wouldn't have the patience to actually unlock the new endings going in blind. Now, besides the new dialogue, on New Game Plus, once you get to Hinako's home, it actually shows what ending you're locked into. Its puzzles changed to show what path you're on. On the second playthrough, we learn more of the red capsules and that they allow one to enter one's own mental landscape. I really like this. After all, substances have always played a major role in Silent Hill since the first one. So Shu gave it to Hinako so she could see if she really wanted to get married. Ironically, this leads him to getting murdered in the first ending. We also get more of Hinako's past, how she didn't want to be a bride so much she eschewed the things that society deemed a wife should know, like sewing and cooking. It's because she has a general fear of marriage. Even while being engaged, that fear is still there because of how she grew up. Her fiance's name is revealed as Kotoyuki, who is the identity of Fox Mask. Hinako is worried that he's ironically wearing a mask, that he will one day change, noting how her father was at one point happy. We also see a glimpse of her past, one of her final conversations with Shu, how they had to say goodbye and they can't be partners anymore. We then see Fox Hinako, who reiterates that one of them has to die. I will say I do like how in the second time around you can actually use the calendars in the house to make a rough timeline, like how her marriage is on the 6th. I generally like when Silent Hill rewards players for being observant. So at the end of the game, I originally thought that the doll was how Bird Hinako appeared in the Shrine World, kind of like how Fox Hinako is a monster. But nope, it's a Tsuko Mogami. Yeah, the novel states that that is what it is. Basically, a Japanese thing where an item can gain a soul. It's the doll that Hinako played with at the start, but had to discard because all the girls shunned her, but years later it still returned to try to help the girl it wanted to play with. I wish the game actually hinted at that, because without reading the novel, again, I was under the assumption that this was how Bird Hinako is perceived in the shrine. And yeah, some people complain Neobards dropped the ball in regards to full translating, and I gotta agree, even earlier on you could just find Japanese text on the wall. The problem? I don't read Japanese. So either with no sword or it purified, and with the elixir, Bird Hinako is exorcised by Fox Mask. Shu arrives and declares he didn't want Hinako to get married, he always wanted her to be his partner. He questions why does she seem to trust Kotoyuki so much before Shu becomes a monster. Fox Hinako defeats him. Shu states that Hinako is his and he's only lending him to Kotoyuki. Kotoyuki states Hinako is his, while she meekly states please don't treat her like an object, acting like her mother. Hinako is married, while Bird Hinako says no, pleads that she doesn't want to end up like her mom, and is killed. Now, the third ending, more of Hinako's past is elucidated, that she was bullied for being too masculine. She enjoyed playing with dolls, but she also enjoyed playing hide and seek with the boys. But neither group wanted to be near her, so she was an outsider until she met Shu, her partner. We also learned that Hinako doesn't hate being a girl, rather she hates the box that is her gender, that she has to act a certain way lest she be shunned. This dysphoria is at the heart of her conflict, because she saw what happened to her sister Junko, how when she was pregnant and gave birth, how horrible she looked, and that she resembled their mother, greatly implying that just like their mom, Junko was married to someone like their father, someone who was emotionally abusive. So she has that fear of being a woman in society, and she wants to stay partners with Shu, But in her note, she reveals there's a part of her that wants him to look at her as a woman and not as his partner, his friend. We see a flashback of Shu and Hinako where, if you couldn't figure it out by now, it's revealed Fox Master's Kotoyuki, and Shu mentions that he barely remembers him. We also learn that Kotoyuki and Hinako have exchanged love letters. Fox Hinako appears and talks about Kotoyuki, how she loves him, but his love is bittersweet and feels like it's dragging her down and suffocating her. You can even find more documents to show that Kotoyuki is obsessed with Hinako. That one time when they were younger, she had saved Kotoyuki from a fox that had scratched him, and that was all it took. From that day forward, he would do everything in his power to attain her, as if she was an item. He would become the head of his family, a bastard child who rose to glory to get her. He even says that she must abandon everything, her friends, her family, even her name, to become his, because she is his trophy. In this ending, the sword spirit is able to defeat Fox Hinako, and Kotoyuki becomes a fox and states that he will spirit her away. Throughout the game, you found historical records that stated that the sword was the true god of the land, that it was tradition that the oldest item was what was worshipped, but once it was lost, people worshipped the next oldest thing. And as for the fox, there were also stories of just that, divine beings taking girls away to explain disappearances. Kotoyuki is shocked that this side of Hinako, this bird Hinako, even exists, and demands she must go away because she isn't acting like a bride or how she should be acting according to him. During the fight, he even talks about how he gained everything to attain her, and Hinako remarks how he dedicated himself to pursuing her, but Hinako needs to dedicate herself to her happiness. Kotoyuki is stunned because shouldn't a woman's happiness come from a man loving her? You defeat him, but Shu shows some sympathy to Kotoyuki, stating he was once a member of the Galactic Patrol, a squad they used to have as kids, with him and Hinako. As the pair leave, Hinako remarks Shu looks odd with a tie, clearly implying that this whole intense battle was just her finding the courage to leave and find her own happiness. There is an extra credit that says the town is being destroyed, but it only exists in her mind, so it's just her mental landscape going back to normal. Now, time for the final ending, which I'm conflicted on. Firstly, again, you need to do 2 whole other endings, so this makes it seem like it's the canon ending, but you also get even more notes from your friends revealing more about the red capsules and Rinko's and Sakugo's feelings. Rinko admitting her feelings of inferiority, but stating she will never forgive Hinako for what she did to Shu. And Sakugo admitting that she was scared, but everyone goes at their own pace. That she loves Hinako, and that she's sorry for thinking that Hinako betrayed her, because in her heart she knows that one day she will also get married. That's not the only revelation. At the home where all the new stuff happens, you get more interaction with Hinako's parents, with her mom saying that she doesn't see the true side of both her father and mother. Hinako is of course upset because her father threw a knife at her because of his pain of being swindled by a friend. Eventually you meet her father, who apologizes, and Bird Hinako tells Fox Hinako that she doesn't have to forgive him, but at the very least she has to hear him out, and he says he thought he had to be a strong father for his daughters, but he gave them a warped perception of men. This confession is conflicting because we're shown letters that he's happy with the dowry that they would receive. We also learn that part of their family's debt was actually medical debt for Hinako's mother, possibly during childbirth. At the start, we thought the debt was only because of her father. He couldn't live his dream of being a chef and was actually swindled by a friend he had considered a brother. You seem to come to peace with your parents, but you still have to fight them. Kind of odd, but whatever. Now it's time for the ending, where Bird and Fox team up. Here, Hinako says, why does she have to fight? Half of her loves Kotoyuki, and half of her seeks something else. Here, you basically fight the bosses from the second ending and the third ending, as both Fox Hinako and Bird Hinako. Fox Hinako says she knows Kotoyuki loves her and isn't like their dad, which I don't believe. You defeat them both, and Kotoyuki says he spent his whole life trying to get Hinako, that he's neglected himself. He will give her space and work on himself to see if he's worthy of their love. As the landscape of Hinako changes and it's now quiet, with her bird side and fox side sitting together. I also don't like this ending. I don't dislike this idea of Hinako's masculine and feminine side coming to terms, that she has no fears of getting married and finding someone to love, being a woman while still being herself. But also in previous endings, it's clear that Kotoyuki doesn't love Hinako, he loves the idea of her, and wanted her to kill a part of herself. He also made her mutilate herself in her landscape. In the novelization, it's even revealed that the reason that Hinako seems to trust Kotoyuki so much is because he had actually hypnotized her, which I can believe regarding his character. However, it does take away some of her agency in her own story. Again, not against coming to terms and peace with her inner trauma, but it kind of just left an taste in my mouth in regards to the character of Kotoyuki himself. So, yeah, the game's over. What happened to it? Well, it sold incredibly well and got rave critical reviews, though there are some that are conflicted. I've heard some reviewers say they would love this game if it wasn't called Silent Hill, or it would be perfect if it was something else. Which, I get it, I am judging it on a scale. I did enjoy it because of its sound, its characters, their arcs, because of the settings and its themes regarding gender, and the boxes that we place ourselves in because of them, and because of how society expects us to be. But because of its combat, its level up system, its weird ending system, and some of the endings being not so coherent, it's not my favorite Silent Hill. I still really like it, but if I'm gonna do a tier, I'm sorry, but I just enjoyed Downpour a bit more. I even read the novel for F, well, a fan translation, and I've read 3 books for this channel and in my personal life. I'm joking. Parasite Eve is still the best. I just think a video game is really hard to make into a book because it's just describing the game that you just played. So if there ever is an official English translation, pick up Parasite Eve instead. My literary nonsense aside, I think what will go down as F's greatest legacy is that it's the first part of Konami's plan. Again, Motoi, the producer of the series, has stated he wants Silent Hill to be everywhere. In an interview with Inverse after the release of Silent Hill F, Motoi even says he wants to expand Silent Hill, that there are plenty of places outside, say like South America, Russia, Ireland, that have their unique beliefs. He says the one issue that's stopping it is that they don't have any partnerships with any studios in South America. And this isn't just a flex or something he said for the heck of it. In that same interview, Motoi noted that the distinct blend of realism and fantasy, what one might call magical realism, is rarely seen in video games. And when he thinks about magic realism, his thoughts are to novels like Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, or horror novels by journalist and writer Mariana Enriquez, whose book Our Share of Night is actually on my Google Play Books backlog. It's kind of cool that we share that, honestly. I can wholeheartedly agree with his sentiment. About a month from writing this, I saw the film Hokum, an Irish film regarding a witch trapped in a hotel and the trauma of the main character, who is played by Adam Scott. It felt like a Silent Hill story, which is the highest praise I can give to a cerebral psychological horror. Honestly, if you haven't seen Hokum yet, I highly recommend it. So I can dig this going to other locations and getting immersed in them. And it's clear that Motoi is someone that isn't gonna half-heart it either. So if anything, F is a test run for Townfall, which is the project I'm most interested in coming from Silent Hill. Let's see what the Scots can do. Overall, I can see why some fans just cannot stand F. Again, it's not my favorite, it has some deep flaws, but I'd say it's still a good Silent Hill game, which, based on that scale, makes it an amazing survival horror game. Well, guys, gals, and those in between, that's another in the bin. And what's the plan for the next video? Well, you know what? Screw it. I decided why not to finally go ahead and take a crack at that dot hack video that I've only been teasing since, well, my first video. So let's go ahead and do it. I've already even seen the anime sign, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video around. If you enjoyed it, send it to your friends. If you hated it, send it to your enemies. Till then, hope you have a blessed day. See you next time.